my mom did try to come to Thanksgiving lunch at my sister's house around 3 a.m.
Oh, wow.
3 a.m. She backs out of her driveway, which there's retaining walls on both sides of her drive. She backs out of her driveway in the dark, obviously.
Yeah, which she had said she wasn't comfortable doing anymore.
Doesn't comfortable driving in the dark and heads out. And not at my sister's house. So she's at some unknown house. We did not know these people. They lived about 5 houses down from my sister. Nobody knew them. She'd never been there before. She's ringing their doorbell.
Dimensions of Dementia is an educational video series from the Alzheimer's Association Greater Cincinnati Chapter. Join us each week for personal stories, engaging conversations, and educational content exploring issues such as caregiving, identifying warning signs, dealing with disease symptoms, and latest advances in diagnostics and treatments.
So welcome back to another episode of Dimensions of Dementia. I'm Dayna Ritchey. I'm the program director for the Greater Cincinnati and Miami Valley chapters of the Alzheimer's Association.
And I'm Andrew Pitlick. I'm the director of the Cincinnati Tri-State Walk to End Alzheimer's.
Yeah. And so Andrew and I really wanted to do this podcast together because we both have a personal connection to the disease beyond just working for the Alzheimer's Association. I think we actually both work for the Alzheimer's Association because of our personal connection. So my mother passed of Alzheimer's in January of 2021, and she was 78 when she died.
And my mother passed in January of 2024 at the age of 69, having been diagnosed with early onset at 59.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible. And rare to some degree as well. So I know we want to just tell everybody briefly kind of what are the 10 warning signs. If you want to learn more about those, please go to alz.org/dimensions of dementia and look up the 10 warning signs. We'll go into more detail there, but can you give us just a rundown of what are the 10?
Know the 10 signs early detection matters. Number 1, memory loss that disrupts daily life. Not just general, not paying attention or wasn't listening hard enough, but memory loss that disrupts daily life. Number 2, challenges in planning or solving problems. Number 3, difficulty completing familiar tasks. Number 4, confusion with time or place. Number 5, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. Number 6 is new problems with words and speaking or writing. Number 7 would be misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps, not just dropping the keys and not knowing where they were, but not being able to actually go through what you did previously to be able to find them as you're retracing steps.
Yeah.
Number 8, decreased or poor judgment. Number 9 would be just withdrawal from work or social activities. And number 10 is changes in mood and personality. So normally a combination of those factors or a combination of those symptoms is sort of what is going to be the big indicator for an individual.
Yeah, you don't have to have all 10. I'd say, honestly, if you just have one, you should at least talk to the doctor because there's lots of things that have those exact same symptoms and are not Alzheimer's and dementia. So like withdrawing from work and social activities, that's also a huge sign for hearing loss.
There you go.
We tend to withdraw when we can't hear. And actually research shows if you live with prolonged hearing loss, that could increase your risk of dementia. So it's all a big catch-22. But yeah, if you just hear one of those that's super concerning, you should talk to your doctor because it may be something totally treatable like a thyroid issue, vitamin issue, that kind of stuff.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're talking about identifying these symptoms as a way of being able to, notify a loved one of what's going on. And with your case of your mom, what kind of symptoms were you guys noticing that kind of raised the alarms for you?
Yeah. Well, so many people say looking back in the rearview mirror, you're like, oh, that was a sign. Oh, that was probably a sign. Like years before the big straw that broke the camel's back situation, we're kind of like, I bet that was a sign that we just kind of thought was some weird situation going on. But for my mom, the big sign was all around Thanksgiving Day. So actually couple years before this Thanksgiving, she had sat down with my sister and I. She just had the two girls and said, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable driving at night anymore." So typical 70-ish-year-old thing to say. She just said, brights kind of bother me, blah, blah, blah. And so if you guys have something where I need to come, for the grandkids or something and be out after dark, somebody's just going to have to pick me up, and she was totally open to that idea and just kind of put that out there as like, no longer driving after dark. So figure out some other solution. So we knew that and seemed fine. So that was several years before, about a year before the Thanksgiving incident, as we'll say. She teared up and said, I think I might be getting lost while I'm driving. Now, my mom, some of the things as you've shared your story about my mom, your mom, they're similar. My mother's mother had Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
So she knew it well. And you said in a past episode, that was really the only thing your mom was afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's fear was always getting this disease as well, since she had seen it.
Mm-hmm.
The word Alzheimer's was like a 4-letter word. We couldn't say that word or talk about that word or anything like that. So she was teary-eyed about this getting lost situation because she knew that was a common sign. So that's, interesting. But we were like, well, I knew there was a lot of construction where she was trying to drive. And I, frankly, was getting lost there too. So like most people, I was just kind of hopeful that's what it was.
Sure.
And we put a tracker on her car, and it actually relieved a lot of her stress, knowing that, if she accidentally ended up in Michigan,
You'd be able
we
to
could find her,
Yeah.
right? And so everything was great. We're watching her from time to time. She's always where she's supposed to be, no concerns. We go a full year probably, and all's good. Then Thanksgiving happens. So my mom is supposed to be at my sister's house for Thanksgiving lunch. So probably like 12:30, 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't show up. So my sister calls her. Now, my mom and my sister have lived in the same houses at this point for like 15 years. They're 2 miles apart from each other.
Sure.
It's not a difficult journey. So my sister calls to check in on my mom. And my mom is so livid with my sister. She's like yelling at her, claiming like, "You don't want me there for Thanksgiving. I've tried to come over for Thanksgiving." Like, she just has these temper tantrums on the phone, hangs up on my sister. So, and meanwhile, I'm not there. I live out of the state. I don't know any of this stuff's happening. So my sister pulls out the tracker. What is up with mom? And so, yes, my mom did try to come to Thanksgiving lunch at my sister's house around 3 a.m.
Oh, wow.
3 a.m, she backs out of her driveway, which there's retaining walls on both sides of her drive. She backs out of her driveway in the dark, obviously.
Yeah, which she had said she wasn't comfortable doing anymore.
Doesn't comfortable driving in the dark, and heads out. And not at my sister's house. So she's at some unknown house. We did not know these people. They lived about 5 houses down from my sister. Nobody knew them. She'd never been there before. She's ringing their doorbell. And fortunately, they must have been out of town for Thanksgiving because the police didn't show up. Like, crazy. What is going on here with this poor woman that's coming over for Thanksgiving lunch at 3 a.m? And so she goes back home, and then my sister can see she attempted it again, like 45 minutes later, and a third time.
Oh, wow.
About an hour after that. So 3 attempts.
Before the sun comes up.
In the middle of the night.
Wow.
For lunch at the wrong house each time. Like,
Jeez.
This house didn't even look like my sister's house. It was a totally different look and feel. So all kinds of warning signs,
Yeah, that's like a 5-alarm fire right there, and difficult to deny.
Yeah. So we, sat down with mom and said, okay, let's talk about the Thanksgiving incident, which is what it was called in my family. And, it's not funny. It was very concerning to us, but we always used humor to kind of approach my mom and disarm her to some degree. And, something she was able to articulate that I thought, looking back, was so important, because I said to her, Mom, it was 3 a.m. It was pitch black. Like, didn't that seem weird for lunch time? And she said, I thought a lot of things were wrong. Something seemed off, but I kept getting this overriding sense of urgency, like almost these irrational thoughts that my daughter's waiting for me, my family's waiting for me. I'm going to be late. I got to get there. This fear of not showing up on time or disappointing the family or whatever this irrational thought was, she said that just overrode all rationale of like, the stars are out.
Wow.
This house doesn't look familiar to me. Like, all the things that should have been warning bells to her,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't get that.
She was able to look past them just because of that just rush of urgency. And
This voice in her head saying, nope, you're wrong. You got to get there. You got to get there. So she was, unconsolable. I don't know in the moment, honestly, what my sister even did to explain to her, like, I this is not a cruel joke.
Yeah.
We're not playing hide and seek on Thanksgiving. This is a serious concern. Like, this is not normal. My mom was not, my mom was very defensive, unfortunately. Like,
No, I'm
she
sorry to hear that.
couldn't deny that those things happened. But I remember really plainly her saying, like, girls, this is just what 72 looks like. You better get used to it. It's going to happen to you, and we were not in our 70s, so we couldn't really argue with that. We were pretty sure that wasn't normal 75-year-old situation, but it's really hard to try to empathize with that when she was just sure this is normal. This happens to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to talk to the doctor. You don't need to be in my business. Everything's fine. Similar to you, my mom lived alone too. She had been a widow for over 25 years. My mom's personality was she was a hermit. She was very introverted. She went to church once a week.
Mm-hmm.
She had her friends at church. They basically just sat in the same pew together.
Yeah.
Like, when I asked her some
Familiar
questions.
face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She had the phone number of, I think, one of them.
Oh, wow.
When I started asking her a question, do you ever go to lunch with these ladies after church? Nope, just church. And most of us aren't chit-chatting a lot. It's kind of like going to a movie.
You kind of keep your mouth shut a lot of the time when you're sitting in
having
church.
a lot of conversation there. So nobody really, thought anything of it. So she even made my sister and I kind of the victim with her friends at church. My daughters think there's something wrong with me. And I remember her coming back from church one day and saying, all my friends think I'm normal, by the way. All my friends say this is normal senior citizen activity. And I'm thinking, yeah, your friends see you for how long? Once a week, and you talk to them for 30 seconds?
And we've been talking a little bit about how these symptoms exist within the context of changed behavior.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so how could they judge that?
Right. So
if they didn't get lunch after church.
I know. Or, how do you deny that? I'm sorry, but unless somebody stole your car, you left for lunch at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a little rougher for us to, like a lot of families, a lot of families are kind of like, how do I get this diagnosis?
Yeah.
And, we did get one, and I'll talk a little bit later about how we finally were able to get permission to go to the doctor with her and express some of our concerns. But what I always tell families, if you don't ever make that happen, you mentioned it when you're talking about your mom, safety is the key, right? We know something's not right here. And if they're not going to admit to that, some ways our hands are tied. But how can we make sure that they can live in a safe environment knowing something's not right until we can get to some, closure of diagnosis or living situation that's more secure than private residence alone and those kinds of things. And so, it took us several months after Thanksgiving to get her diagnosis, but with all, I think it was maybe 4 or 5. So relatively short compared to sometimes people wait for a doctor's appointment for 8-9 months. So we were kind of lucky in that stage too. But again, not an easy road. And even with my mom, after she was diagnosed, we weren't allowed to like use that word with her.
The stigma lingered.
No, I remember driving her home from the doctor's appointment, and she didn't want to talk about it. We weren't allowed to have a conversation. I asked her if she understood. Yep, she understood, but like just blinders on, denial through the rest of it. And unfortunately, I think my story is a little more common.
I think that's the case.
And out in the community with people I talk to, which makes it hard for family and friends, definitely. So that was kind of my big aha moment.
I'd say that's a pretty big aha moment.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, but we were lucky, she could have been in a traffic accident.
Oh, absolutely.
Fortunately,
there's not a lot of traffic on the road at 3:00 in the morning, but even so.
Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of the big, we got to do something about this moment.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about what you guys did next.
Okay,
but
great.
We'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, let's talk about that in another chat. Thank you for joining us for Dimensions of Dementia, and we'll see you in the future.
Thanks so much.
If you want to support this show, please share it with others in your life who have been impacted by this disease. We can't do this on our own. For more information about the topics discussed today, or if you have questions about Alzheimer's and other dementia, please visit alz.org/dimensions of dementia, or call our 24/7 helpline at 800-272-3900. And if you want to get involved with the Alzheimer's Association through volunteering or raising funds for research, check out the links in our description.